Hey ratbags, it's Jade with a big mysteries are grounded still to be resolved. What are we going to expect to see kind of finalised by 1.0 and the answers to some of the biggest, longest questions, new creatures and pretty much the locations. I've done this video various different times and stages before, but now we've got even more info about the 1.0 from the trailer and other stuff the devs have said, so I'm kind of revisiting it. But yeah, I want you guys to tell me, what do you think is the biggest mystery still to be resolved for 1.0? So right now the spacer is pretty much how we become big again. That's what Burgle tells us. It's been part of the game for a while now that we need to basically find a way to make ourselves bigger. And that's one of the first mysteries. Will the teenagers be able to go back home? Are they going to be blown up to their normal regular size again? Short answer, yes. I do think the story will be satisfying and 1.0 will have the teenagers actually escape from being super tiny. Now the spacer needs a certain power to fuel it. In fact, it's called an embiggening cell. And the embiggening cell is made out of different ingredients like berry leather, koi fish scales, gum nuggets and 2 mystery ingredients. We also know from Burgle mentioning recently that once we unlock 2 of the super chips and return them, he's going to basically ask us to go and craft the embiggening cell at the coffee percolator that we've seen in some of the 1.0 release trailer. That's all the way over this side. So that will be a mystery that gets resolved, finding out exactly how the spacer works. Of course, bigger mysteries underneath it are, why were teenagers made tiny? Were we friends of Wendell's kids? Are we another set of teenagers since we find so many more skeletons? The news report states more teenagers have gone missing. But could that just be directed at 1 or 2 of the teenagers in reply to the others that had already gone missing? The report does make it sound like it's actually more. So the 4 that we know of, they're not the first to be shrunken down. And of course the story is a big component of the mystery still to be unresolved. Who is exactly behind all this? Is it Wendell? Is Burgle a mad, bad robot? Or is there something more nefarious going on? I mean, even more nefarious. What's happened to Wendell's kids, 4 and his daughter, Sarah? And where about his wife? We know she left him because there is some sort of ring hiding away somewhere underneath this rock right here. Wendell and Trudy. And Wendell pretty much confirms this in some of the audio logs. Did she really leave him? Or was she shrunken down and exterminated by a bug? All down to Wendell not wanting to let her go. Are the bones that we know all around these areas actually the bones of his family? Pretty dark stuff. So that is probably the biggest mystery going. The story's conclusion, how the spacer fits into it, the ingredients we'll need to activate it, and what's exactly happened to the rest of Wendell's family. Then we talk about locations and what we're actually going to see. And you guys, regular viewers, might be a bit sick of me mentioning some of these. Like I said, it's a bit of filler content. But ultimately, the upper pond, I do think is going to have the cut content. Stuff that was in-grounded in the very early stages that I first showed you guys. Leeches and water striders, as well as a harpoon gun, harpoon bolts. Maybe even a 3rd different type of breathing mask. That's the kind of stuff I expect to see added to this. Alongside, I do genuinely believe there's going to be a boss. We know there's something relating to something called Wicklow or Limerick. And that kind of points to some sort of boss that we're going to have to kill that we'll be able to make maybe a shield and spear out of. The flip side of that though is it does look like there is also another tier bow coming to the game. So maybe that's the harpoon. You won't be able to actually unlock the harpoon until you've defeated the boss, which I think is a Dragonfly Slayer. Or Dragonfly. The Dragonfly Slayer was a sword that was in the game. So could it be a case of needing Dragonfly Slayer to kill the Dragonfly? And then your reward will be something like the harpoon. But yes, a mystery still to be solved, exactly how the upper pond fits in. Are we going to be making good use of the corridor that leads down here? This laboratory all to be fleshed out. And will it eventually lead to another walkway or secret way up into the upper yard? We know there's a pink castle up here as well, and that's got to be resolved. Is that going to be something we'll be exploring? Could it be the home of the mantis maybe even? Given the mantis doesn't look like it's in just an open area. It looks very much like it's in its own little dungeon. Something very similar to the Broodmother. And that brings me on to the second one. There is a hedge in the 1.0 trailer and a bunch of the other builds. Could this hedge be where we find the mantis? Not just roaming around, but in very, very similar circumstances to the broodmother. Obviously, if you don't know, somehow you're fairly new to Grounded, you go into the hedge, you find the broodmother's entrance, and you can go inside and basically summon the broodmother. We know it's called a BLT. Could there be something for the mantis as well? Likelihood is yes, although I kind of hope it's not kind of copy and paste job from this. I really don't want it to be just another hedge and just another hollowed out area for the mantis. I really am hoping it's a terrarium that maybe is in the ground. That is something else to remember. In the trailer, it does look like there is some sort of branch coming up from the middle of the actual area. The mantis is kind of running around, and then obviously all around it we do see more of sort of the leaves. That could be a terrarium. Remember, we are super tiny. So from a ground level, something like the hedge, with walls all around it, it'd have to be a very low-lying hedge to make that look inaccessible. That's why I think it's actually going to be in a terrarium, and the leaves that we see are actually growing down from the main central root. And you can clearly see the flowers, the blossom lotus or whatever it's going to be, is the same name as the armour. It's very different from what you'd normally find in hedge. So it's clearly not the hedge, it's something different. I at one point thought, well, maybe the hedge will have some sort of different berries in it. But there's nothing that's pointed ever in the game files to being raspberries or kind of any red berries. So I think that the hedge that will be here will be pretty much the same as this. It won't have as much laboratories to go and explore maybe, but it will have a way up that we'll have to go and get into the terrarium. So that is location mystery, I guess, number 2. Number 3, of course, is the upper yard and how this all ties in. What kind of new resources? Are we going to be able to harvest any of these actual plants themselves? People have been speculating a lot that obviously they're not harvestable at the moment. And much like other plants in the game that did become harvestable, we could potentially be able to cut a lot of these down. A lot of you guys have been telling me they're like raspberry bushes, or there's some sort of bulbs for other plants, fruit or veg. And I have to agree, they do look very different from what we've seen. Now it could just be an idea because they want everything to look a bit different from the rest of the yard, that in fact we won't be harvesting any of these new sort of bushes. If we do, are they just going to offer the same resources like weed stems or grass planks that we already get? But nevertheless, still a mystery to be resolved. And then yes, there's another bag area in the trailer showing next to the coffee percolator. There seems to be another rubbish zone. Now that would kind of make sense. It is a bit of a mission going all the way to the far corner over here to go and get them resources, especially when the majority of you guys have probably built your bases in and around the oak tree or around this zone. Or according to my poll, a lot of you guys really like the upper yard area. So yes, there is going to be another rubbish zone by the looks of things. Another chance to get more food resources like the spicy cha-chas, and yeah, plenty of rotten stuff too. Maybe we'll see more sickly variants, maybe not just the roly-poly, sickly ladybugs, sickly black ox beetles, you never know. So then we got the Undershed area, so I guess that's like the 5th location mystery. We know there seems to be some sort of laboratory door that's kind of been wedged in somewhere just here by the wood that you can only access and realise there's a sort of cut out for it right here. So is this going to be leading to the Underhedge laboratories? From the trailer, it looks like we're going to spend a lot of time in here getting new resources, but also coming up against them monstrous creatures that look like they're very much modelled on the same sort of creatures we've seen up on side the table here, the D&D table. I think it's pretty conclusive now that whatever we see, if it's Wendell that's been mutated or some other creatures, they've kind of got the same sort of look and feel to these guys. Some slight differences, loincloths and pants, but very similar looking indeed. So there's going to be 2 areas, the Undershed area and the Undershed laboratories. So we'll be exploring some zones before finally getting access to the laboratories themselves. And that's got to be where we get one of the embiggening cocktail recipe items. Of course, the other big mystery that we're hoping to be resolved, and I think this will be the home for it, is the Ant Queen. It does look like it's a Black Ant Queen, judging by the files that mention Black Ant soldiers and minions. And so I think this is what these huge network of tunnels will relate to. This is what we'll be doing in this zone. Could this lead to a much harder dungeon where we'll be hopefully getting some of the ant pheromones? And that's another mystery. How is the ant pheromones actually going to fit into the game? Are we going to need an army of ants to maybe take on the final bosses? Could the pheromone just simply be a way to tame a new type of creature in the ants? Just like the aphids and the weevils will now be able to have ants as pets? Or is the pheromone going to be used for something different? It's going to be helpful for keeping certain creatures away, maybe as a bug defense tool. Again, we know a little bit that the devs are messing around with the bug defenses. So could there be a way to gather or craft something to keep certain factions away? So the pond, the hedge, the upper yard, the rubbish tip zone, then we've got all the undershed areas, and I'm presuming a third major anthill with the ant queen somewhere underneath here. In terms of other mysteries, I've spoke about this a lot in one separate video. Will we be going inside the house? And I don't think we will. I still feel this is just part of the trailer, just to hype the game up a little bit, a little intro, but I don't think we will be exploring the insides. But it is still a mystery left to be resolved. Could we see a return? The devs have stated a bunch of times that we're not actually going to be going into the house before 1.0 comes out at least, and no real big concrete plans to do so. So it'd be a surprise if we do end up going inside to get anything. I guess the last one that I should mention is this area here, the deck. It has been gated off for a long time now. It's got that under construction, so are we going to see substantial changes to this area? It does feel a little bit kind of underdeveloped compared to so much of the rest of the place. So hopefully there'll be some sort of new resource to get up here, or even just maybe another location for lint on another map. And then we've got a few places that need a bit of a makeover, or we might think they still might need a bit of work. The oak tree and some of the laboratories that lead directly down. Now the oak tree has had a bit of a spruce up and change, the laboratory inside, but we still got to work out exactly how some of these other laboratories fit into the game. Namely this one here. It does look like it's a button to open something. Could it just be a button to open the one with the koi pond? Getting access to the upper koi pond, maybe we have to actually press this first. At the moment there's only some science points and just a blocked up hole. Could that lead even deeper into the oak tree? So that is probably one of the last mysteries that we don't know the answers to just yet, nor how to actually open this up, although I imagine it will be something like a biometric scanner once again. In terms of locations, lastly, the honeypot. Will we get honey inside it? It's been in part of the traps in the game files, and you could spawn the traps in ages ago, but there's no honey in this pot, so that's a mystery still to be solved, whether or not honey will form part of defences in the future, or if it will be a resource or not. And one I think's been solved is the back area of the sandcastle. There used to look like it was going to have some sort of dungeon down here or some sort of entrance way to underneath the sandcastle. But it's been blocked by this stone for the longest of times, and it doesn't look like a stone that you will eventually be able to blow up with a bomb. And I've actually removed the little parts underneath it where again you used to be able to sort of walk down. So I think they probably just cut that content and haven't decided to develop that further. The other stuff we don't know about enough is bugs and creatures. Other than the leeches and the wart striders, is there any opportunity for any other bugs to come into the game? Of course we know about the mantis, but there are still a whole bunch of bugs that I've shown you guys from the files. Things like the silverfish, which I still think is going to be a major part of the game somehow. And we know we've got the red backed spiders. I'm trying not to call them black widow because everyone keeps correcting me and saying they're not black widows. They're actually a different type of spider because black widows actually have them red markings on its belly rather than on the top of it. Or you get what I'm saying, maybe it's the other way around. So things like earwigs, possibly wasps and stuff that we thought might come to the game, they might not. There are other mysteries that still need to be resolved. Devs have had suggestion after suggestion about what bugs to add, of course, but they can't add every single one. It has to make kind of common sense, or to fit in this narrative and in this part of the world. Could we see frogs come into the game, or maybe more advanced tadpoles? That's the kind of stuff we're hoping to find the answers to in the future. So there we go, just some of the mysteries that still need to be answered and what you expect to see given to you guys once 1.0 is here. I'll keep you guys more in the loop and hopefully some fresh new content soon. Until next time, rat bags, laters.